And everyone in this room has played a role in making that happen. So I want to thank you for being our partners in this community. On behalf of Immigrant Services, I also want to thank the Government of Canada's commitment for supporting essential funding for services and programs that we know make integration successful and meaningful. So now I would like to call upon Honourable Boyle Bonfield to say a few words.
Thanks, Sandra. Wow, everybody in one room at the same time. And it takes a room like this to settle people and integrate people. Of course, being on the board at Immigrant Services back when it was in the basement on Speedville Avenue and it was flooding and the door didn't work at the front, you've come a long way. And it's great to see how really what we looked at back then was how do we get the whole community supporting newcomers, and really that's where we're at this morning. We looked at the new government when we were first elected, bringing refugees to Canada, something that was a hallmark of what we wanted to accomplish. And then seeing Chaya in the room and having the round table here with a few hundred people saying, how do we prepare the community for all these people coming to live here? And fast forward a few years, and now we've got families in schools, families in businesses. We've been doing a bit of a tour. We were at the mosque last night, and that welcoming group there at the mosque. So really, the work will never be finished, but we've got a good start. We've got a good start when you think about it only 3 years ago that we were really trying to set some foundation work here. And now we're looking at some of the complications and some of the different groups that have different struggles that we weren't anticipating, and more support needed in different areas. So having my friend Ahmed Hussen come here has been tremendous. A whirlwind tour of Guelph. We were at candidate school together 4 years ago, having supper going, okay, we're entering public life. I wonder what that's all about. So here we are doing public life. And you know, the service to communities is something that Ahmed came to Canada from Somalia, and right away got involved with social justice, and right away got involved with the community in Toronto, and spent 7 years helping with social justice issues, and then getting a law degree and working with helping people that are struggling with Canadian law and supporting them through their settlements. And then onto the Justice Committee once he was elected, Justice Committee of the House of Commons, and then January 2017 became the Minister of Immigration, Citizenship, and Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. So quite the trajectory the last couple of years, but it's great having you in Guelph. I'll turn it over. They didn't come to see me, they see me all the time. So I'll turn it over to Ahmed.
Thank you.
Minister Hussen.
What struck me coming into this room and greeting all of you is just how many different players are involved in the settlement and integration of newcomers. So it's not just the Immigrant Services of Guelph, Wellington. It's all the different players in this room, whether it is the employment services folks, the link provider, and all the other players in this room. And that's exactly what I think is behind Canada's secret to immigration success. Because when you consider even the challenges that we have with integration and settlement of newcomers, they pale in comparison with how other countries struggle with this issue. We are light years ahead. We're way ahead of many, many countries in the world in how we welcome and integrate people. And it's because we invest in them. As a government, we have increased our funding for settlement and integration services by 30%. 30% since 2015. Because we believe that giving newcomers the tools that they need to succeed is not only good for them, it's also good for Canada. Because when newcomers succeed, Canada succeeds. It's just that simple. So of course, if it means that we need to fund put more money to eliminate waiting lists for language training in British Columbia, we did that. If it means creating more childcare spaces for newcomer women so that they can have access to the wonderful settlement programs, we did that, we invested in that. Lloyd mentioned the wraparound supports that some segments of the newcomer community needed, and we heard that from our consultations. And we did that through the Service Delivery Initiative. It's a small pot of money now within IRCC that allows innovation within the settlement service sector. That's what I was telling Jim about. Experimenting with language training at the workplace, for example. Experimenting with helping, not treating all newcomers as one monolithic group, but recognizing that there's different challenges, but also different opportunities with different segments of newcomers. So for example, there's a program that we're supporting in Toronto called Refugee Jumpstart, which is tapping into a sub-segment of the refugee population that has a business background. So they just want to come in and start a business and employ Canadians. And through that program, they've been connected to other folks in that industry because they don't have access to capital or to the business networks that Canadians have. But in that process, many of them are succeeding. First of all, creating a job for themselves, but also hiring others and growing our economy. I also heard in the room, someone just spoke to me now about how we've streamlined a lot of the processes. Lloyd and I, when we went to Ottawa, honestly, the first year, we noticed how broken the immigration system was from the previous government. And it was really deliberate because they didn't fund it adequately, they didn't address the backlogs, they didn't address the wait times, and they kind of let things just slide. I mean, cutting $400 million from CBSA, not investing in the Immigration Refugee Board, not investing in citizenship, actually making it harder for people to become citizens for no objective reason. They added an extra year, they put more obstacles in the language requirements and in the residency requirements for no absolute reason. Making 14-year-old kids take a citizenship exam when those kids are already in school taking their own exams. Doesn't make sense, right? So we reversed a lot of that and we brought citizenship back to where it was, and we ensured that those who have lived in Canada are contributing as permanent residents who want to join the Canadian family should be able to do so. Of course, after taking the exam and so on, but no additional obstacles should be in their place. The last thing I'll say is that I want to focus on economic immigration as well, because the services you provide, one of the beautiful things about Canada is that we provide settlement services to all newcomers. It doesn't matter if you came as a refugee, or as a family class immigrant, or as an economic immigrant. Economic immigrants are those who are coming to fill an unfilled job in places like Guelph, or to bring certain skills to Canada, and then creating jobs for Canadians. So when you hear, people say, oh, these immigrants are coming in and taking our jobs, the facts are not supporting of that argument. Immigrants create jobs for Canadians, and in fact, they grow our economy, and they fill unfilled jobs. There are many industries in our economy that are now short of workers, and they've hired all the local Canadian labor that they can hire, but they're still short. So they need to bring skilled workers from abroad. And the only way they can do that is through our immigration system. But there's also a global race for talent. So if you look around the world, you'll see that countries are each, competing against each other to attract that talent to their country. You know why? Because when you attract talent, you know what follows talent? Investment. Investors will go to make an investment in a particular country if they can find the specialized skills that they need for their talent. There's a reason why Ubisoft made a huge investment in Montreal, because of that ecosystem in Montreal that had trained people in that particular industry. You see that everywhere in Canada. And so in a conference of investors recently, when our innovation minister, the Honorable Navdeep Bains, talked to them and said, they all were picking Canada, and he said, why Canada? Why did you guys choose Canada? And he had separate private conversations with each one of them. So they couldn't hear each other. And each one of them, without fail, said, we chose Canada because of its immigration system. And he said, what do you mean? They said, well, because we know that when we go to Canada and move our company there, if we need to bring talent, we can do so through our immigration system. Last week, actually a few days ago, I was with a a Canadian businessman who has a number of plants in Canada and a few in the US. In one of his plants in the US, he has a number of workers whose visas have expired and they're being told you have to leave. Whereas in Canada, if he not only does he get to renew those visas or work towards permanent residency, if he wants more workers, he can bring them. In the US, he's losing the few that he had. So he has to close that plant. Now that local community will suffer if he does that, right? So our immigration system works for our economy. Our GDP would drop if we cut our immigration numbers. So immigration in Canada is not just about compassion, although it is. It's not just about family reunification, although it is. It's not just about being nice and compassionate and open and welcoming, although that's a big part of it. It's also about being smart. Because believe me, there's a lot of talented people in the world who are now making the decision to move to Canada as opposed to other countries because of our immigration system. That's their first and foremost check. And they say, you know, I'm moving to Canada because I know that I can eventually join the Canadian family, but that my kids will feel welcome. I wouldn't have to choose between my religion and my citizenship, which you have to in some countries, right? So we need immigration in Canada. And there's a population demographic reason for that as well. In 1972, we had almost 7 working Canadians supporting each retiree. By 2012, we only had 4 working Canadians supporting each retiree. If we do not continue to be ambitious in immigration, by 2036, we will only have 2 working Canadians supporting each retiree. Now, with 2 working Canadians supporting each retiree, how will we be able to fund CPP, healthcare, infrastructure, housing,
Looking at our
transit?
seniors.
Yeah. How will we be, let alone bring new programs like pharmacare? How will we maintain the standard of living that we have? And if you want to see an advanced preview of that, you can see in certain parts of Canada that's already happening. So in Newfoundland and Labrador, for every 100 workers that come into the workforce, 125 leave the workforce. That's a gap of 25 people. How do you address that? So obviously one of the ways to address that is to include more people in the economy, women, indigenous people, marginalized youth, but it's also through immigration. So for those who are spreading fear and division and anti-immigrant rhetoric, which is now going around the world, for those who are trying to bring it in Canada, and believe me, they are, you just have to look around, you have to remember that those people are actually working against our national interest. Because our economy simply needs immigration to continue to grow and to create jobs for all of us and to create prosperity for our communities. We rely on that. Finally, I will end by making a pitch for diversity. One of the reasons why Canada is increasingly a diverse country is through immigration. We have this unique ability, very rare in the world, of being able to welcome people from all corners of the world. That's very rare. It's not the same in a lot of countries. And so that ability allows us to really tap into that rich tapestry of backgrounds, different experiences, different languages, different perspectives, and build strong people-to-people ties with all these countries around the world. And so it allows Canada to open trade markets. A country of 37 million people, we now have trade access to Europe, North America, and many countries in the Pacific. Although we are a trading nation of 37 million, we have market access to 1.5 billion people, customers. That's our future